Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to set up the flaps in X-Plane. I'm going to show you all the different kinds of flaps that we find in real airplanes and how to set up each one in the sim. We're going to start with the simplest and most annoying type of flap control that I can think of. It's the 3-position momentary, and here's how it works. As long as you hold it down, the flaps come down. As long as you hold it up, the flaps motor on up. And as soon as you put the switch in the center, the flaps just stop moving wherever they are. You can see how simple it is because whatever position you're holding the flaps handle in, that's the direction the flaps are going to motor. But it's so annoying because you have to hold that button down for as long as you want the flaps to move. That means every time I'm flying this airplane, say to practice touch and goes, I'm sitting there staring at the little flap indicator to see how long to hold this button down when really I should be flying the airplane. Okay, now let's do this in the simulator. So I've got my own little airplane design open here in PlaneMaker. Let's go to Control Geometry. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check the box that says flaps are infinitely adjustable. Clearly, this is what's gonna let me motor those flaps on up or down with no detents at all. File, save, pop into X-Plane, developer, reload the aircraft. And so now we're reloading the airplane with infinitely adjustable flaps. They're the kind you can just motor up or down as much or as little as you want. Go to joystick commands. I'm gonna say my left button here, button 6. I'm gonna type in FLAPS, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be flaps up a notch. There it is, flaps up, apply. The other button to the right, we're gonna say that's flaps down a notch. Select that. So our flaps up a notch is our left button, our flaps down a notch is the right button. So we are now going to take a look at the airplane, but we're only winning if the flaps move as long as I hold the button. Holding the button and flaps are going down. Letting go and they stop. All right, try it again. Holding the button and the flaps are moving. Letting go of the button and they stop. So there you go. That is the exact setup we just had in the 172 we just saw. Okay, let's take a look at the Cessna 182 for the next kind of flaps. Now this kind is way better. All I do is put them where I want them, move my hand, and those flaps are gonna motor until they get to the position they're set at. A much nicer way to do flaps. Let's see how to configure that in PlaneMaker. Control geometry. Now flaps are not infinitely adjustable. Our flap settings are 0, 10, 20, 40. File, save, X-Plane, reload aircraft. And now what we're gonna do, same commands, flaps up and down a notch. Let's hit the flaps down a notch and see what happens. Boom, I just touched the button and it motors to the first notch. Boom, hit the button again. See, I'm showing my hand, so hold on, show I'm not holding the button. It goes to the next, boom. Touch the button and it goes to the next notch. So there we go. We just found a way to do flap commands. Now, what I want to, I'll tell you what, why don't we try an experiment right now? So what I've shown you is the way we can do buttons to control the flaps. But what if you wanted to simulate the actual like handle that, that you kind of, that slider that you slide in the cockpit? I'm going to try a little experiment here. Instead of throttle for this axis, let's see what happens. Can we find flaps here? I bet we can because I coded it. I just have to find it. All right, I'm sure people watching this video were like, I saw it, you went right past it. Okay, here we go. I'm now gonna move the flap handle down. And I've moved the flap handle down and the flaps are going to that position. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move that flap handle to halfway. Okay, I just set the flap handle to halfway and I'm back to flying the airplane, and sure enough, the flaps motor to halfway. So what you just saw is a way, if you are building a physical cockpit, you can actually have a joystick, axis actually driving the flaps to whatever position you want just by moving the axis. And sure enough, it's going to go to the steps that we defined here for the various detents. So basically, this is two ways to do that kind of conventional flap system of setting either a handle, a slider, or issuing button commands to drive the flaps from one detent to another. Now what about the Cirrus? The flap handle in this thing sets up just like the flap handle in the Cessna 182,
only it's sideways.
And here we are at a simulated Cirrus. I'm going to show you this in the simulator because that was somebody else's Cirrus. I didn't want to get in it without asking. And then in here, there it is. This is exactly the same thing we just saw in the Cessna 182. The handle is just sideways on the panel instead of poking out at us. And then sure enough, hit the button for command, flaps down a notch. And I think it's all obvious what happens. Hit the button for commands, flap down another notch. And of course, we know exactly what's going to happen there. So this is exactly the same thing, really, as the Cessna 182. They just have the little handle sideways on the panel like this instead of coming out at you like that. Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
What was that?
This is a different kind than I thought. See, they never showed me the actual thing. This is a button that has 3 positions: up, medium, and down. It's not really something you can hook up to an axis.
That's what I was telling you.
I thought you could hook it up to an axis.
You can't hook it up to an axis. Not without some hacking.
All right.
Do you feel sorry?
A little bit. All right. So, okay, rolling.
Yeah.
And yes, I learned about a new flap system in this Diamond DA42. A customer tried to explain it to me, and I didn't understand it until I saw it. Here's how it works. This flap handle is also a 3-position switch, but it's different than that Cessna 172. You don't hold this thing as long as you want the flaps to motor. Instead, if you slap it to the up position, those flaps will eventually motor all the way up. You slap it to the down position, those flaps will eventually motor all the way down. You slap it to the middle position, and those flaps will motor to approach.
All right, and now let's take a look at this airplane in the simulator. So let me show you what I've done with the joystick buttons this time. So we go to joystick, and of course got my stick here. And when I press the button 10 here, I've got that set up to flaps retract fully. When I hit button 12 that you see here, that's flaps first detent, you see? And when I hit this bottom button, it's gonna be flaps extend fully. And so if you're building a home-built cockpit, for example, and you have one of these 3-position switches, just clearly have the switch send in button 10, flaps retract fully when you're at the top, flaps first detent in the middle, and flaps extend fully when the switch is down at the bottom. And those are commands you can hit as well when you're flying this airplane if you want it to feel like the real thing. So let's go on ahead and hit the retract button. Of course, nothing happens because it's already retracted. Hit that one in the middle, flaps 1 detent, and there you go. And then hit the flaps fully extended, and of course down they go. So basically, you just got to remember these flap commands give you the power to pretty much do anything you want.
So here we are at a pipistrel. This thing doesn't seem to have any flaps, so maybe the best type of flap is no flap at all. The aileron goes up, the other one comes down. But here's the part I don't get. There's still a flap handle. What does it do? Do they go down? And so now, both ailerons are down together. Well, that's acting like flaps. But yeah, one still does run in the opposite direction as the other. So yeah, you still do get roll control.
All right, let's try that in the sim. Control geometry. Johnson bar direct link. That is just the direct linkage from the bar to the flaps, and the Piper Cherokees and whatnot have this. Okay, file, save, developer, reload the aircraft, and if this works, then basically as fast as I can move the joystick handle, that's how fast the flap should move in the real airplane. Let's find out. There it is. So there's the Johnson bar. This is just what it's like to fly a Piper Cherokee. Now, subtlety here. The pipistrel, as we saw, of course, doesn't actually have flaps, has droopable ailerons. So we can always go to, let's see, special equipment or special controls. And ailerons with flaps. And so you can say, oh, we'll just have the ailerons droop 20 degrees as the flaps come down. And that'll let you do exactly what we saw in the pipistrel just now.
And then finally, we have the flaps on the Piper Cub. Oh wait, this doesn't have any flaps, never mind.